All right. Hey there, HR Tech Talks family. So glad you're here with us and looking forward to a fun conversation here. I know George Rogers, my co host, has been doing a lot of episodes here, and I'm so excited to do one myself for the first time in a little while, and excited to dive into AI, hiring, some of the things that are happening there. If you're like most of the known world in the last few months, you probably heard about things like ChatGPT and generative AI and all those kinds of things. And even if you're not a technical person, I'm hoping you'll stick around for the conversation today because you'll get some good ideas, some good takeaways, some good examples of how these things are fitting into more and more the work we're doing. And it's not just taking away things that we really love to do. In many cases, it's taking away stuff we don't necessarily love very much and letting us serve candidates in a better way, help them get a better experience, help us get a better experience, all those good things. And I'm so excited to have Madhu here with me from Arya Leoforce. They have a couple different things you're doing there. And so we're going to dive into this conversation with Madhu and welcome him to the feed. Welcome, sir. Glad to have you.
Thank you, Ben. Thank you for inviting me to your show.
Absolutely. Well, I'm looking forward to this. The audience knows I'm a bit of an AI nerd a little bit. So I'm so glad to have you here with us to dive into this, have a good conversation around it. Before we do, would you take a second and let the audience know more about who you are, what you do, please?
Absolutely. In fact, this is a very pertinent question to the whole philosophy of philosophy behind the AI that we use in Leoforce. So let me give you a little bit of my background. I came from a southern Indian countryside, grew up there, went to engineering school in India, and ended up in Raleigh, North Carolina in '97. Worked in technology for a long time, and while I was working, I also used to teach executives in NC State. That was version 1 and 2 of Java. That's when the Java was starting out.
Take us back in time there a little bit.
Yeah. Yeah. And then 5 years into it, we kind of looked at an opportunity. How do you bring technology outsourcing to small to medium-sized companies? And that was the first enterprise that we started at the name of Spectraforce. And accidentally, we got into staffing and contingent staffing. And that because of our background in technology, we try to bring in the processes and technologies into hiring and recruiting and helping companies to find good talent. So the Arya and Leoforce is born out of the need that we have. And the initial idea was in Spectraforce, we have hundreds of recruiters. And how do we create efficiency in recruiting? Now, if you look at the typical delivery organization, you have 20% really good performers, 30-40% average performers, and usually the rest are below average. So my job at the time is how do I bring this average and below average performers to mimic star performers? So
right there. Yeah,
absolutely. And I went to my engineering table and tried to put together a small team. And I asked, how can we look at it? Can we use machine learning? Can we use a little bit of artificial intelligence and see how we do that? So after a year and a half, we came up with a product, and we call it Leoforce, and it looked more like an ATS. It was very easy back then. I went to a couple of conferences, and people were so intrigued. Believe it or not, I remember back in the day, we were the only company that stated we use AI and machine learning. And there was nobody else. And if you go to the same conferences now, you won't find a booth that doesn't talk about AI.
True.
So after that, it was very easy for us to onboard a couple of customers. But what we learned in our first experiences, everybody is asking how long this AI is going to take to learn, right? And what about this report? What about the other reports? So we looked more like an ATS. So we thought we will spend a lot more time on typical ATS than our core AI piece. So what we decided is we want to bring the AI piece out and kind of improve upon the time to learn from the data, right? And at that time, we also wanted to give a little more definition to our AI, right? And when we talk about AI, it's a lot of learning from the data, right? But again, it also depends on what you want to learn from the data is huge, and you can look the data the way you want to look at them, right? So that's why I was telling you the question you asked me was very pertinent.
Mhm.
Um, Today, if we need to talk about any person, the best way to understand a person is by looking at their past. So, when we want to find a right person to a job, it's not just the skills the person have, it's not just the IQ.
Yes.
End of the day, what matters is for companies is who can perform better. What is the probability of success for this person in the role, which doesn't exclusively depend on the person's skills or person's IQ. It also depends on the environment. It also depends on the culture. It also depends on other teams, other tools, the processes they used. So a lot of contextual information plays an important role in somebody's ability to be successful, right?
For sure. Um, it reminds me, I was telling someone the other day about this book I read years ago called The Myth of Fit. And it talks about how a lot of leaders, when they're taking a new job, when it doesn't work out, like, oh, they didn't fit. You're like, no, it's because of those factors you're talking about there, right? The team around
Exactly.
them, the expectations that were set, is the right culture there. Right? There may be a fit piece, but there's a lot of other things that are in that job description, or they're not in the job description, sorry, that matter to that role and whether they're going to be successful or not.
Absolutely.
And
Absolutely.
the hard part is recruiters can't often see all those things or combine all those variables. Talk about the AI piece a little bit, how that fits into this conversation, because it has the ability to understand some of those other variables, the other factors in the equation that a human can't see, and
Right.
can help to say, okay, while Ben and Madhu may look similar in terms of their skills, Madhu's a better fit because maybe he's worked in a company like this before, he's worked in a similar industry, or some other kinds of things that do fit into that equation that are hard to tease out as a human.
Right. I mean, continuing from where I left off, and my first answer was when we look at a job or when we look at a person, we don't look at what's described in the job description or only
Mhm.
what's described in the resume, right? Um, a lot of times you only get 10 to 20% of information from the description, the language. But if a job exists in certain company, with certain team, with from certain industry, belonging to certain occupation. These are different contexts and entities that can give you a lot more intelligence about a job. And same with the candidate, right? If a candidate is coming from certain background and got exposed to certain type of skills in certain type of company, right, with certain kind of educational background from certain type of university, right, all of them have profound impacts on how do we kind of fit this person into a background of this company, right? So when we look at these combinations, we simply don't look at people who can write a good resume or people who can write mention the skills. It's all about, when I look at this job, who's in this company, what kind of team they have. We have literally hundreds of millions of data up from a lot of public sources. And then when we understand this job and we bring this candidate who have also kind of different exposures and overlap them in a multi-dimensional cube, and then we try to find out who can work better, who have more probability of success because of the overlap in the backgrounds. Because our exposures kind of gives us the ability to work together collaboratively with other people in the team. So that's how our AI kind of identifies who have a higher probability. So this is not unlike somebody who do a search, a contextual search or an intelligent search for keywords or information. This is more like looking from a different dimensions of a person and a job and a company and an industry and a role and occupation. So multiple of these dimensions gives us a way to look at somebody in the context of a job. We don't believe there is a good person or a bad person. All we are interested is, can somebody perform better? What's the probability of success here? That's a bigger differentiation, and it's very hard for a recruiter to sit down and figure that out in the context of larger data. So that's an advantage for somebody who uses the technology like ours.
Yeah. Well, that was one of the things I was going to follow up with you on, is what are the impacts here? And it seems like part of what you're pointing to is predictability, right? We're
Mhm.
predicting that this person is going to be able to perform better. They'll be able to ramp up more quickly and onboard more quickly. Like they're more likely to be able to perform the job, which is a critical thing that pretty much every organization would be really interested in if you said, hey, guess what? We can predict this next hire you make is going to be a higher quality fit. It's going to be able to perform better than the last person you hired. Every company is going to jump into that, I think.
Right.
What other sorts of outcomes are woven into this that employers are getting the benefit from when they're leaning into using some of these tools like Arya?
Right. I mean, the biggest challenge in generally in the industry is how do you measure of the success
Mm-hmm.
of these things, which is a very
Yes.
difficult thing even for us. Um, but there are certain indirect indications that we look for, like what's attrition look like, what's the average tenure of people looking like in an organization, right? And the growth of an organization itself is also another indicator. There are a lot of um, indicators that can give us some kind of sense. Otherwise, one of the things companies are always struggling is how do we determine the performance of a person? There are certain systems telling us performance management and all, but there's no magic bullet in figuring that out. Even our Arya can take, hey, company, can you give us high performers so that we can try to figure out people look like that? It's a very hard ask anytime we talk to even a large enterprises who can invest on this. So it, but we always look at this secondary indicators. How about what is this data telling us? Um, are they able to retain better? Because if you're happy in a job, you're less likely to move out as well, right?
Mm-hmm.
And also, um, if the attrition rate or the average tenures, there are different kind of data points that tells us how a company is benefiting from a technology like ours.
Okay. Okay. Excellent. One of the other pieces of this, we talked a lot about the employer side. Right? We're
Hmm.
talking about how this feels to be an employer, the benefits there. One of the things I always point to is, as a recruiter, when I was recruiting, I didn't get into it because I was so excited to look through 100 resumes and try to pick out the two or three I thought were going to be the best. Or like, we don't get excited about those things. We get excited about really forming a bond and connection with the right candidate, spending time with people one on one. And one of the things that stands out to me is when we look at our research on um, employers who are using AI technology in their hiring process, they say their time that's freed up, they're actually pouring that time back into more relationship building, more communication, more connection with candidates, instead of saying, okay, great, now let's keep everybody at arm's length and let the machine handle all of it, and let's just no, they're pouring more time back into those very human activities because it's giving them the chance to do that. You said a
Right.
minute ago, a lot of recruiters are unable to spend that time because they're having to do all these other manual tasks, repetitive tasks, things like that don't excite them very much.
Right. And it makes sense, right? That's the very first problem that we solve, right? How do we improve the efficiency, right? You don't spend your time on mundane tasks like, now I'm creating a job description and I'm creating criteria to search. I'm going to this portal, that portal, I'm pasting this job here. Um, you know, as a human, you're good at building that human connection than doing the mundane tasks again and again, right? And the machines can do a lot better those kind of tasks. But what machines can't do is build that human relations, right? One thing is data is telling you whether a person is good or not, or fit or not. But once you figure that out, the other part is, how do you communicate that to the candidate? How do you um,
Hmm.
build that relationship so that the person understands what this job, what this company, what the culture, and build that relationship, and also allows the recruiter to see the human side of the person. Data is data, right? There's no correct or incorrectness in the data, but um, it can't tell the human aspect of a person. It still need to be interfaced with another human.
So let's take that a little step further, if you don't mind. So we're talking
Sure.
about that human communication piece, the connection piece there. We talked about kind of the recruiter side of that equation, how
Hmm.
that feels, and again, from the conversations I've had from my own personal experiences as a recruiter, that's the stuff that really gets you excited about the job. That's the reason we love doing it. On the candidate side, though, do they mind the outreach from an algorithm, an automated outreach? Do they care about those things, or are they okay with it because they know it's leading to that connection with an actual recruiter at some point down the line? What sort of what do the candidates at the companies that you're working with, what do they feel about the kind of experiences they're getting?
Great question. There is no right or wrong answer on this, because certain jobs, it's very important, whether you have a job or not, for me to even spend time, right? Um, so people historically used to talk about this active job seekers and passive job seekers, right?
Yeah.
If there's an active job seeker, the person doesn't want to waste. I mean, they really need a job, so they need to find a job quickly. So whether it is a bot reaching out to them or somebody reaching out to them that's indicating there's an opportunity to talk, I think they will entertain irrespective of where the information is coming from. But when it comes to a passive or rather consultative headhunting scenarios, then the human connection plays a lot more important role, right?
Okay.
Sometimes, you can take this automated message and personalize it, or sometimes you may have to reach in other medias too. Um, so it depends on the role. It depends on the where they are, where the person is at. Certain roles, it's very simple, especially in contingent workforce or temporary workforce, it's very simple. And also it's simple when the person is actually looking for an opportunity. And in the passive side, it's a little more different. But at the same time, the way that a technology or AI can help a candidate is to understand better and why should the person talk to the company, right?
Mm.
And that's why in Arya we kind of put another product into beta. We call it Arya Muse. This is exclusively made for uh, the people, right? The job seeker, general employable population. We thought, why don't regular people use the same tech as organizations, right? When organizations want to find a good talent, why can't people find a better job?
Hmm.
And why can't they take advantage of AI to figure out how to design their careers, right? What options I have? Should I stay in this job? What path can I take? What is opportunities there? So, and how do I, let's say if I like something, right? I'm sure we all have experience. We applied to jobs online. We don't know where our resume went. It's just a black box,
Thumbs
right?
down. Yep.
Exactly. So how do you, I mean, if you understand how these black boxes work, then you can prepare your resume better, create your document better so that that can be on the top, or you can get some attention of somebody looking at it, right? But that's one piece. But the second piece is, who are the companies that you need to target? What are the roles that you need to target? What's the future should look like, right? That can help. I mean, the technology can help people as well on that side.
It's really interesting that you brought that piece up, because I didn't realize y'all had actually rolled that one out. So I'll have to go and explore that one a little myself. But one of the things we saw in our brand new research we just finished on the candidate side is we asked them, are you comfortable with employers using AI? And they said, only if I see a value for myself personally in this. And the number one way they said there will be value is if it's matching them to the right company, the right job. So as you just pointed out, candidates are perfectly fine with that based on the research we have, because it's helping them surface the jobs that are more relevant, or surface the companies. Oh, I didn't even know that company was out there. They're just down the street, right? That's a shorter commute or whatever else, but they have a job that's relevant to me and fits my experiences, fits my skills, right? So helping them find the roles is what they care most about in that. That's really
Right.
interesting to hear.
Yeah.
Hmm.
And another thing to bring it into play is, a lot of times, right? Uh, people don't know how to write resumes, right? And some people think they need to be more artistic in writing, aesthetically better.
Mhm.
But in practically, the way you should write resume widely varies, right? Depending on the job, depending on the time, um, and depending on the role, depending on industry, a lot of things have an impact on how you present yourself. But irrespective, um, when people use technology or not, let's say you are a recruiter, right? When you want to find somebody, what do? You create some criteria to search, whether in your own internal database or file system, or some external job board. Do you show up there? Right? Do you and the recruiter think the same way or not? Right? If you don't use similar kind of keywords, then you will not show up in that. We are in the world of Google and search engines, right? So
Yes.
we need to be uh, careful about what kind of language we use in these resumes to at least pop up. And the second part is, once they pop up, how do you convince? Right? There are two, three pieces to this. So uh, one must pay attention to how they create that resume, and the same way how they create job descriptions also, right? When you are a potential job seeker, then you are going to search the jobs, and is the job ready for the search engine, right? That's also another piece, that even though search engines are becoming better and better, but it still makes sense for somebody to spend time and understand how these things work.
Goodness. All right. I'm trying to think. I have one more question for you. I was going to ask you kind of a little more future focused to wrap us up. It's my take that employers who are using tools like this, that are using tools to automate parts of recruiting, to be more efficient, to be more capable, those employers are going to stand out. Those employers are going to differentiate themselves and be more competitive than companies who are just relying on the raw, sheer human power of, let's just hire another body, let's just hire another recruiter, right? What's your take on that? Do you agree with that? Do you think it's going to accelerate because of some of the recent changes in AI? Do you think we're on the steady path there? I just love to know what you think about the future of the space as it pertains to how AI is continuing to change it, continuing to, I don't want to say invade, right, or intrude upon this, but how it's continuing to augment, I guess, the abilities of recruiters. What's your take on what's next in the space, and how that's going to continue to shape that going forward?
Absolutely. I mean, see, whether we like or we don't like, or irrespective of our opinions, AI is here and it's going to grow and it's going to evolve, right? And as naturally, we are all scared about it, right? Same thing happened before industrial revolution. Same thing happened when IT revolution came up. Every time there is something new comes up, we are naturally scared, right? That's perfectly all right. But one thing we must all, if we have to learn something from the past, we always improved. Economy grew. People had better lives. So we should look at the past and understand. We should embrace it much more quickly, to the advantage of both company as well as the person as well. Whether we like it or not, it's going to come. We have to evolve as a race, and we have to embrace new ways of living, right? And look at how things are changing with simple thing like ChatGPT. The way that we people communicate has it's so much profound influence, and many people are using, even though it just released recently, right? And this is going to happen whether we like it or not. And my view, it's going to happen for good. And for think of it as, right, a lot of times when in large enterprises, traditionally they don't have very good tools that are available for them to create internal mobility. How do you create career progression for people? These kind of AI tools is helping them to even figure out how do we create a good career path for employees. Right now, this is looking more objective, more holistic, than with subjectivity or some kind of bias with the people, right? And to a large extent, these AI tools can help even to mitigate biases to a certain extent.
Yes.
There's some systemic biases even the AI can introduce. Somebody need to be careful about it. Um, but it's a lot better than the subjectivity that human introduces typically, right? So we have to be ready. And this is, to me, in my personal opinion, it's for good. We
Yes.
get more opportunities. We get to do a lot better things to make life more exciting into the future. So I think there's not too much to worry. If there's only one advice I can give, embrace it as soon as you can.
Excellent. I love that. It's a great note to wrap up on. So thank you again for joining me. Anyone that wants to learn more about what you and the team are up to, leoforce.com, probably the best way to do that,
Yes,
correct?
yes, and we also have a LinkedIn professional page where we post a lot of information about our company, and even with respect to the developments in the industry.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you again for joining me for the fun
Thank you, Ben.
conversation. I love a chance to dive into AI with someone who knows it inside and out, and this has been a really good discussion for me.
Appreciate it, man. Thank you so much.
Absolutely. To everybody else out there, hope you enjoyed today's episode of HR Tech Talks. Got some good notes and good ideas on AI, how it's affecting recruiting, improving recruiting for us as a community, but also for the candidates out there. Thanks again for spending some time with us. I appreciate you, and we'll catch you again next time on HR Tech Talk.